What's up, everyone? Ben Morawski here from FCP Euro, and we're back with another episode of our Explain series, where we dive deep into the various systems within your car. Today, I'm here to talk all about the air you breathe inside your car. As it turns out, there's way more to it than just rolling down your windows or turning the AC knob. We're going to discuss air filtration, how modern car manufacturers are evolving HVAC systems, what you can and should do to help maintain that system within your car, and a bunch more. Air quality is often talked about when it comes to emissions, the environment, and self-health, but it's often overlooked when it comes to cars. The Washington Post actually wrote an entire article, "When Sneezing Kills," that mentions some horrifying statistics, such as those who sneeze while driving at 60 miles per hour may travel 50 feet with their eyes closed. Or if you're anything like me and only sneeze in odd increments and no less than 3 times minimum, even longer. So while it may seem like a joke, the quality of air you're breathing in your car to avoid potential distractions or secondary health issues is pretty important. Unless you drive a Vert with the top down 365 days out of the year, like my coworker JR. Now, before we dive too deep into some of the finite details and technology in modern day HVAC systems, let's take a quick look at how the system actually works in a large majority of vehicles on the road today. Some of you may be thinking, this is some basic stuff. The air starts outside, moves through some sort of vent, and then inside your car. And you're not technically wrong, but there's a lot more to it than just that. Think of when you see a dead skunk on the road and the time it takes for that smell to get to you inside the driver's seat of your car. There's a system in place to filter out the air before it ever finds your nostrils. Now, just like the HVAC system in your house or apartment, the climate control system of your car is designed to heat or cool the environment you're in and to provide fresh air to the passengers of the vehicle. Virtually every vehicle has 2 choices for passenger airflow: fresh air or recirculated air. So let's take a look at how the system works. Your vehicle's climate control system pulls fresh air from a vent under the hood, located near the engine bay, typically in the rain tray or otherwise separated by some sort of physical barrier from the dirt, oil, and heat of the engine. This position near the base of the windshield is an area of high air pressure, which means there's always a plentiful supply of fresh air for the system to use. Once the air has entered through the inlet, it is directed to the heater box. The heater box contains all of the major components of the climate control system, more or less, such as the blower motor, cabin air filter, and flaps to select for fresh or recycled air, and all the heating and cooling elements in general. The cabin air filter does this thing first, removing physical particles from the air such as dirt, mold spores, and other particulate matter. At the same time, the activated charcoal section, if it's equipped with one, absorbs chemicals and other odor-causing contaminants. From there, the air is sent through the blower motor, which dictates how much air is being pulled from the fresh air vent, as well as the force of the air coming out of the vents inside the car. When you select a different fan speed, or when the climate control system requires a higher or lower speed, the power flowing to the fan is controlled by the blower motor resistor. It's normally located close to the fan so that the airflow can keep the resistor from getting too hot. From the blower motor, the air is actually then forced across a heat exchanger called the evaporator. Refrigerant gas, typically R134A, is cooled by the air conditioning system and passed through the evaporator. As warm air flows over the evaporator, the air is cooled. If you have defrost selected, the air conditioning system is typically activated even on a cold day. The reason for this is the side effect of the air being cooled is that the moisture is pulled out of the air, effectively making the air drier before it is blown onto the windshield. A flap inside the heater box then directs the air to either the vents, or if the climate control is set to the heat setting, across another heat exchanger called the heater core. This works in the same way as the engine radiator, but with a different goal. With the engine radiator, ambient temperature air is used to cool the engine coolant being passed through the radiator to manage the engine heat. With the heater core, hot engine coolant is used to heat the air being sent through it in order to warm up the passenger compartment. If you ever wondered why you see a puddle of fluid underneath your car in the summer, it's because all the cars with AC have a drain that dumps the condensation from the air cooling process in a little puddle somewhere around the middle of the car. The air then, having less moisture in it, is more effective at dissipating moisture from the windshield or other interior surfaces. Now, I will mention, if you own a BMW and you see that puddle, it's potentially a coolant leak from one of your many plastic cooling parts, or if you own an old air-cooled Porsche, it's probably oil and not from your AC at all. But that's for a separate video. So after leaving either the heater core or evaporator circuits, the air is then directed by a final set of flaps to whatever interior vents are selected on the climate controls. From there, it meets your nostrils and lungs for the very first time. Or you can bypass all that hard work your car is doing by opening your windows. But then you're vulnerable dealing with raw, unfiltered, real-world air. So now that we have an understanding of how the system works, let's talk about how it actually came to fruition. Over the years, HVAC systems have changed drastically. The basic concept of a cabin air filter was first developed back in the 1950s, when the chauffeur for former Freudenburg CEO Hans Freudenburg noticed his clothes were becoming noticeably more dirty from the air coming in from the outside of the vehicle. He had the original idea of placing a non-woven piece of fabric over the air vents to prevent this, and boom, the very first automotive air filter was born. It wasn't until 1989 that a vehicle manufacturer incorporated this concept into a production vehicle. The 1989 Mercedes SL Roadster was the first vehicle to come standard with a cabin air filter from Freudenburg. Other high-end German marques such as BMW, Audi, and Volkswagen all followed suit with optional cabin air filters on various models throughout their lineups. The first mass-market car to receive a cabin air filter as standard was actually the 1991 Opel Astra, a small car similar to the Volkswagen Golf or Jetta. Now, mind you, air quality wasn't of the utmost importance at the time, with restaurants and airplanes allowing smoking, and general emissions and air quality restrictions were just much lighter in general. So throughout the 90s, cabin air filters became more and more common across multiple makes and models. But it wasn't until the early 2000s that nearly every car in the United States was delivered with one from the factory. Some cars during the period were even manufactured with a location for a cabin air filter, but they weren't installed from the factory. So if you own an older car from the late 90s, early 2000s, you may be surprised if you check for a filter and find the spot empty. If so, you can always add one now and experience the health benefits that one could provide. Car manufacturers have continued to develop the technology behind more modern and advanced air filtration systems. Volvo is slated to come out with their IAQS, or Interior Air Quality System, which actually uses sensors to monitor incoming gases in the surrounding air and can actually close off the air intake loop if it reaches too high a level of carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, or hydrocarbons. It also uses a multi-filter with active carbon that can then absorb those odors and gases. On the opposite end of the air you breathe spectrum, some companies are adding smells to their HVAC systems, like Mercedes and Audi with their in-cabin fragrance technology. It's literally an interchangeable cartridge that'll pump perfume throughout the cabin per the driver's liking. It's pretty fancy stuff. Now, the common air filter itself has had equal levels of attention and development, especially when compared to what was started as a literal handkerchief. Corteco, the aftermarket division of Freudenburg, brought to market the OE brand Micron Air with one goal: to engineer the highest quality air filter on the market. They have continually updated both filtering and activation mediums, which have most recently resulted in cabin air filters that are able to remove even the smallest physical particles and irritants, filtering out particulates down to 2 microns. Now, a micron, also known as a micrometer, is a unit of measurement equal to 1,000th of a millimeter, or 1,000 nanometers. For a frame of reference, skin cells are about 30, pollen is 90, and E. coli and staph and other viruses are about in the 2 micrometer range. In 2019, 30 years after the first cabin air filter was introduced, Micron Air launched their gas shield activated carbon filters. These offer sophisticated activated carbon materials, which are targeted and regionally customized for protection against extremely harmful air pollutants such as nitrogen, ammonia, ozone, aldehydes, and sulfur dioxides, providing anti-allergen, antimicrobial, and antiviral functionality. So it's obvious a lot of attention has been spent on the manufacturer side of things when it comes to your air quality within your car. Now, what can you do to help maintain and keep up on your car's air cleanliness and health? It's a fairly easy and straightforward process to inspect and replace cabin air filters in most vehicles. The cabin air filter is typically installed in the heater box, which is under the dashboard near the firewall or the passenger side footwell area. Some larger vehicles, such as an Audi A8, a Mercedes S-Class, or a BMW 7 Series, may even have 2 filters. Gaining access to the filter will depend on your vehicle, but it's usually fairly easy and can be done with basic hand tools. We also have a bunch of DIYs for specific cars here on our channel, so be sure to check those out. Now, once you've removed the filter, give it a quick visual inspection. If your filter shows any signs of mold, a significant amount of dirt, perhaps a little rat's nest or bird's nest, which is likely, it should probably be replaced immediately. Seeing as something most people forget about for years on end, 9 out of 10 times it's the first time you're checking it out, you're going to need a new one. If the filter looks more or less new, gently open the external air side of the pleats to inspect the filter material. If everything looks clean, reinstall the filter and check it again in a year, or maybe the next time you do an oil change. Now, you may be asking, what really happens if I don't replace the cabin air filter? Does it actually matter? Well, the performance of the cabin air filter decreases dramatically without regular maintenance. On the one hand, the increasing pressure drop of the filter might reduce the fresh air and recirculate air supply of the HVAC. On the other side, the efficiency for capturing smaller and likely more harmful to your health particles is reduced. In the case of an installed activated carbon filter, the capacity for harmful gases and odors can be reached, disabling the additional functionality of the filter. Ultimately, it's something cheap and easy to maintain on your car, and just give you a bit of peace of mind that you and anyone else in your vehicle is getting properly filtered air. Now, there are other products in the market to clean the entire HVAC system out. They usually require a special machine of sorts, and oftentimes shops will offer a service to do so. Although there are actually some companies out there that offer an at-home remedy to clear out the entire AC system. Our friends over at Liquimoly have been doing it for about 20 years and offer an at-home kit that is similar to something most shops would use. With a special 2-part cleaning solution and the use of their system cleaner gun, the solution is sprayed directly on the evaporator itself, killing off mold and bacteria that may have accumulated after years of use. An ideal time to do a treatment like this is when you're swapping out the air filter, as it will save you some time and effort getting to the same system within your car. So lastly, there is having your AC Freon or refrigerant recharged. If you remember earlier in the video, we discussed that Freon actually cools the lines and evaporator down enough so I can get the air down to those sub 70-degree temps in the dead of summer. It does have a bit of a shelf life though, and it's common to have a loss of it in your system over time. If you've done the checks and the maintenance that we mentioned, your AC is still not blowing as cold as it once was, then it can be a sign that you need to seek some professional help. This is essentially a blood transfusion for your AC lines, so it's best to leave it to the professionals as the machine it requires is pretty intense, and refrigerant is nothing for you or the environment to mess with. So overall, we just thought it would be fun to take a look at something so often overlooked and give you guys a bit more info on how your car systems work. We have a bunch more of these videos planned to go over the cooling system in your car, forced induction, how ABS works, some electrical stuff, just a bunch more in general. And if you like this video, please hit that thumbs up. If you have any additional questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the comments below. Share this video with your friends and family if you think they could find it helpful. And as always, subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you on the next one.